everyone. Welcome to week 5. In this week, we are actually going to talk about responsive design. We are going to actually focus on design for mobile devices. According to searchenginewatch.com, the number of mobile devices browsing the internet surpassed the number of desktop browsers in 2014. But still, you see a lot of people who are using their phone to visit a website say that it doesn't work well on a small screen. So web pages that require user to zoom and scroll to read the navigation website drives the visitors away. Some of the things that we will explain in this chapter would be that you are going to be able to learn about the principles of responsive design. I don't know why I keep saying design. Also, you should be able to describe the pros and cons of a mobile website. And you should also be able to explain the design principles of a mobile website. We will also focus on describe a mobile face strategy, as well as talk about the viewport and being able to create a fluid layout. Some other things that you will learn: you should be able to make images flexible, use a style for a mobile viewport. Also, you should be able to insert a style span element and actually insert a viewpoint mega tag, as well as be able to test a responsive site using a device emulator. So let's look at the responsive design. Basically, responsive design is a website development strategy that helps the user experience of a website, regardless of a device or browser that are being used. By applying responsive design principles, the web page and content respond to the screen size of the user's device to minimize some unnecessary scrolling and maybe even unnecessary zooming that the user need to do when they are trying to read or interact with the website. So the content in responsive design is easy to read and navigate on devices of 3 various sizes, such as desktop browser, tablet, and as well as phone. There are 3 important concepts that the responsive design is focusing on. One is the fluid layout. Fluid layout applies proportional size measurement to the web page, wireframe, and content so that the content stretches, maybe shrinks, and grows as the size of the viewport changes. So you might ask, what's the viewport? Viewport is the viewing area for the web page, which is much smaller on a phone than on a traditional desktop. So the viewport refers to the basically a portion of a web page that maybe a user see at any one time, regardless of their device or maybe their screen size or their screen resolution or maybe their browser. The second concept is media queries. Media queries allow the web page developer to be able to detect approximate pixel size of the current viewport. This detection allows the developer to actually selectively apply the CSS rules that work best for the viewport size. CSS3 standards that we talked about expanded the capabilities of media queries. The third concept is basically the flexible images. Flexible images shrink and grow based on the size of the viewport. Flexible images, they don't have height and width attribute or value in the HTML document. Rather, the flexible images use basically the CSS rules to resize the image relative to the wireframe and as well as viewports. Because of the growth of mobile browsers, including the ones that are using on the phone and tablets, there's a serious problem that has been created that the developers are trying to solve it. It is because smaller viewports often require excessive zooming and actually scrolling. So there are different techniques that has emerged to address these type of problems. One of them is to build a completely separate parallel website optimized for actually using mobile users, which is called a mobile website. Mobile websites are identified with an M or MO dot prefix in the URL. So you might see like something called like http:// m.usf.edu, for example. In contrast, responsive design optimizes the viewing experience for a wide range of devices using one site. This mobile website approach helps companies that have a large existing website provide a quick solution for mobile users. The major downside of creating a mobile website is that the work required to maintain what becomes two separate websites for the same organization. So it's very hard to maintain that. In contrast, responsive design seeks to optimize the viewing experience for a wide range of devices using one website. So there's a concept of mobile first strategy, which employs the responsive design principles, but it has a very interesting twist in it. So a web developer designs the flexible wireframe and essential content for a smallest viewport first, then add more content as the viewport grows. A web developer then uses media queries to add styles for progressively larger viewpoints, progressing from tablet to laptop to desktop. It's more productive and also it's more effective way to build a website from scratch. So as I mentioned, like in the traditional approach, we were doing first desktop, laptop, tablet, phone. But in the mobile first approach, we are actually progressing from from phone, tablet, laptop, and then desktop. Of course, when we are implementing a website, the implementation depends on many factors. It can include the current environment, basically your target audience, the available resources that are out there, and the time that is available to tackle on the project. Now let's look at using fluid layouts. A web page with a liquid layout also can be called maybe fluid layout. Changes in the width based on the size of the viewport. Responsive design are based on fluid layout. And before we can create a fluid layout, it's actually helpful to study what is the fixed layout. So let's look at what is a fixed layout. Fixed layout, they don't change in the width based on the size of the viewport. Fixed layout use fixed measurement units such as pixels to define the width area of the wireframe that fix the width of the content regardless of the size of the viewport. So in the fixed layout, the content is not resizable based on the size of the viewpoint. I mean, because on the internet you might find a lot of websites that are using the traditional way, which are using the traditional screen resolution. They are actually using the fixed layout. So it's been a few years that it's now more common to use the fluid layout. So we implement the fluid layout by measuring the width of the wireframe elements and content in relative units such as percentage or ems. So in this table, you can see the unit of measurement that you can use in the CSS property value, as well as the common use for each responsive site. Use relative unit of measurement in there. So you can actually see it in here. So the unit, the description of it, if it's relative or fixed, the common usage, and some example that you can see here. Now let's look at creating a fluid layout. To be able to create a fluid layout, we use percentage to measure the width of each column in our web page. A web page can have a fluid layout without actually using the media queries. So as I mentioned, we shouldn't confuse the capability of media queries with the behavior of a liquid layout. So a web page can have a liquid layout without using that media queries. So no matter how small the browser becomes, the content placeholder box on the page shrinks and grows in response to the size of the viewport. So they can resize automatically because the width measurement for the content and placeholder use percentage, which are actually proportional units of measure. To make the navigation links more appealing and easy to find on the web page, we can format them so that they look more like buttons rather than actually the text links. Also, for each button, we should consider that to have extra space to display the link text clearly and to separate it from the adjacent buttons. The navigation system in the phone viewport can also use the same color scheme, but each button should be larger so that the user can find and actually select one very easily on a very small screen. So this figure shows a web page with a liquid layout in actually 2 widths. So as you can see here, that's how we are designing it to have a liquid layout. The next thing that we are going to talk about is we are going to focus on making the images flexible. So what's a flexible image? Flexible image resizes itself to accommodate the size of the viewport. So flexible images are kind of easy to implement. So how do we create the flex images? We delete the height and width attributes value for the IMG tags in the HTML file, and then we add a style for the images in the CSS file to be able to provide the desirable flexibility. So it could be such as maximum width : 100%. So by setting the width of the image to 100%, the image automatically can be scratched to fill 100% of the width of the container element. And the height automatically grows in proportion to the width. So we use the max width property instead of the width property to constrain the image to 100% of its actual size, in case the viewport grows even larger. So you probably don't want the image to stretch beyond its actual size, because that can degrade the quality of image even if the web page is viewed on a very large screen. So we are setting the width of the image to 100% so that the image automatically stretches to fill the 100% width of the container. The next thing that we are going to talk about will be following a mobile-first strategy. So this is it for this part. Hope to see you in the next part.